This week's Extra Life on F5 Live Refreshing Technology is proudly powered by EXA. EXA brings the latest technology to gamers, offering the most immersive products for the ultimate gaming experience. They've compiled the best elements of cutting-edge ENC tech, the latest in Bluetooth 5.0 and 7.1 surround, plus extra features into their headsets so everyone can enjoy a sensational gaming experience. And they've got headsets for Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and PC. Plus, they won't break the bank. Learn more about the headsets that are available and any current promotions by going to f5live.tv/exa. The saga of E3 is one that seems like it just won't end, although it may have this week. In the early days, if you don't know E3, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, though I have not seen them use the words in a number of years, just like CES, E3 was the place to go. There had been gaming at CES, there had been gaming at some of the European and Asian tech shows, but E3 brought the gaming community together in one place. It was a big deal. Publishers could show off games, developers could show off early games, hardware. The original Xbox was first announced during an E3 press conference. The press conferences were big. They were so big they had to take place in different buildings. It was a big deal. But credentialing went a little sideways. And at some point, all you had to do was have a GeoCities website that had the word video games on it, and that was usually enough to get you credentialed into what was supposed to be an industry-only event. Then they overcorrected, and they locked the show down, and that included not allowing anybody from new media to be involved. So, if you were a tech publication that also had a print magazine, for example, Laptop Mag, the year that we couldn't quite get in correctly, Laptop Mag did. Our friend Cherie was there because there was print involved. Without that, I don't think they'd have credentialed her either. And so it was a huge thing. They really locked down and they lost a lot of people. And over time, it didn't get better. The internals seemed to be a mix of chaos and incompetence, or maybe just one or the other, but I suspect a mix of the two. And then COVID happened. With CES, COVID showed us the value of being in a room together. With E3, in the gaming industry, it showed us the value of digital distribution directly to our consoles. And we all felt we needed to get back to CES, and generally nobody felt like they needed to get back to E3. That included the companies that were exhibiting. And so 2020, 2021, 2022, COVID took down E3. Then ReedPop. If you don't know who ReedPop is, they run everything from PAX to Florida SuperCon, which we used to cover in the old days, and might start doing again now that ReedPop's in charge. They teamed up with the ESA to manage the 2023 show, which also didn't happen. This week, ReedPop announced they're out. We're not going to be involved in this anymore going forward. We love E3, but good luck. And on the immediate heels of that, the ESA, the owners of E3, announced that E3 2024 would also not be happening. So I think 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. I think that's long enough to finally admit that E3 is not coming back. That I don't think there's a way that you can take 5 years off from a trade show where Gamescom has grown huge, and about a half dozen others. Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony have all shown that their digital presentations on their schedule when they want work way better than doing it on the ESA's schedule. I don't think it's coming back.
Yeah, I agree with you. So when you, I just always tend to see the broad picture or try to see the broad picture
Hmm.
on trade shows. So E3, what were they accomplishing at E3? Were they doing it primarily for the media, or were they doing it primarily for industry networking, selling things? What were they trying to accomplish?
Media was probably 70% of it. 25% of it was probably publishers and uh, other industry investors and stuff finding smaller projects that they wanted to invest in one way or another. Publishers, offering to publish, or investors putting money into a studio. And the other 5% was some sort of networking. But because it was such a big show and yet somehow tiny at the same time, I'll tell you, the last year that I physically attended, I got a lot more out of Showstoppers than I did out of E3. Just way easier to deal with. Showstoppers, I mean, it was a little different than the Showstoppers that you and I know from CES, significantly scaled down, but it was basically the same show. It was in a bar. They had basically taken over like a bar and grill type thing. The booths were all there. I got to talk. I got to sit down and talk with I think HyperX for like 20 minutes. On the show floor, you get 90 seconds at best.
Yeah. So I love show. I don't think most people know this unless you've been to CES or something would know what Showstoppers is, but it's one of those nighttime shows that they have just for the press to go, and they have a bunch of booths and companies in there. You can only get in if you're credential press.
Yeah.
But CES and Computex and IFA and a lot, and I don't know, would this be true of Gamescom also? Are events that we think of them as journalism events. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
great, we're going to go and we're going to do all this coverage. But I don't think they would exist if that was all they were for. I think they
Yeah.
exist to help companies sell things, and not to us, and not to our readers,
To
to each other,
buyers.
right?
Yeah.
To so if the show wasn't doing a good job of that, then that's why they don't need to exist. Because
But
publicity,
they also weren't doing a good job anymore of getting people excited about the games. The big three essentially stopped participating. Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. They basically did their own thing, sometimes on the same schedule, sometimes within a couple of days. From HQ. So Microsoft didn't have to rent out the Nokia Theater for several days to build a stage, do a press conference, tear down a stage. They just did it in the same room that they usually do the Surface events from. Their big, cool virtual studio that I so badly want to go into. Nintendo, they didn't even have to send anybody to this continent. You know, so they basically stopped participating. They discovered it was easier to not because they could talk directly to the customers in a way that they couldn't quite do in a big room where you're looking at media. And if they wanted demos, they could put them on the store.
well, see, here's the thing. Why do other trade shows still exist? Because they could do the same thing.
Because other trade shows are, like you said, are more focused not on the end user, but on the industry.
Right.
E3
Because
E3 wanted to be a gaming party. They wanted to be a big gaming party. They're a bunch of doofuses. I've talked to a number of them. I've gotten into fights with a couple of them. They're they're, they're just a group of doofuses. Like, they're just gamers. They were like, "Hey, what if we did a big show?" Which is a little different than even say PAX, right? PAX got started as they knew what they were going to be. They were a convention, not a trade show. E3 tried to build itself as a trade show, as an expo, while catering to consumers who weren't allowed in. PAX said, no, this is for consumers. We don't care about anybody else. You pay to get in, and you can interact with whatever entertainment stuff is here. You know, if Universal sets up a thing, great. It was basically Comic-Con, but with a heavier focus on games. And it has been a big success. And then you've got Gamescom, which is very industry. So much so that we don't usually even talk about what happens there on the show, because it's usually very industry focused. So they knew who they were. And I don't think E3 ever quite knew who they wanted to be or what they were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, probably so. Probably so. It's just interesting to me because there are companies like CES, I feel like over the years, obviously much bigger show, but CES over the years, we've seen a lot of companies kind of pull out of it. And I don't mean they pull out in terms of necessarily like they won't participate at all,
Right.
but they don't make big announcements.
Right.
But
Microsoft still
some
has
companies.
Microsoft still has one big booth and a couple of small, and they partner with people. Then they've got all their meeting rooms, but they stopped doing their press conference. They're just showing what's already happening.
Right. Exactly. But we still have Intel, Nvidia, AMD, Qualcomm often, like chip makers, often will make announcements at CES. We often will see for the first time, we always will see for the first time a bunch of new laptops, a bunch of new desktops. So there are a lot of companies that are hooking, even companies that are really big and don't really need to from a press perspective anyway, hooking their wagon to CES and hooking their wagon to Computex. Whereas, there are a lot of companies that don't need to. Like Intel doesn't need. I mean, they must get some benefit out of being at the show, but they don't need to give the keynote. They don't need to to announce new things. They can hold their own event, and they have held their own events many times, and they don't need CES to do it. Now, does Razer need CES to do it to get the attention that they want? Maybe. Does Cooler Master
they get a ton of attention because whatever weird thing they're showing off, they always show off some weird thing, whether it be a prototype dual screen laptop or a keyboard that's bigger than your car. They're always showing off something weird, and that puts their name in front of customers because everybody wants to write about or touch the weird thing.
Maybe that was a great example or a terrible example. I'm thinking of like other companies that are sort of at the, I don't know, notoriety level of Razer or below, Corsair,
right?
Cooler Master, Steel Series, they're not gonna get as much attention probably from holding their own press event or holding their own con.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Being at CES is helpful because, the buyers for Best Buy are there, right? And they can put their hands on next year's product. This is what we're talking about. All right, let's go have a conversation about how many we're going to buy. It's way easier than flying buyers into their offices or whatever. They're all going to be in the room at the same time. Yep. Absolutely. But that's not at all what E3 was about. It was, and it's interesting. So there's a comment in the chat. Epcot needs to bring back Innoventions. Totally agree with that sentiment. Theoretically not related, but it kind of is. Because Innoventions, which was one of the big sections at Epcot, was like a hands-on play zone for future tech. They knew who they were. It was all about consumers getting to see future things. They partnered with companies. Intel has been a partner for a long time at Epcot, and so you'd get to see future stuff. They knew what they were. That was all about consumers touching stuff, and it was a success until Disney kind of gave up on Epcot. But that's a whole different issue. That is the same thing as CES. CES knows who they are. PAX knows who they are. E3 never did, and I think that's, and I think ReedPop getting involved they thought the ESA knew what E3 was, or they had a vision for it. And that's more likely. They had a vision for it, and the ESA went, well, that's not what we want it to be. All right. So, anyway, we've had our problems with E3 over here for quite a while. We predicted many years ago that this was an inevitability. And here it is. It's sad to see, a long time, industry staple go away, but I don't think it was needed anymore. I think there's better shows, better ways to accomplish what people wanted out of the show, but the show never wanted to give them. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of F5 Live Refreshing Technology. If you did, please subscribe to the channel down below, and of course hit the notification bell, because we know that subscriptions don't mean much on YouTube anymore. If you've got topics that you'd like us to talk about in the future, please comment them down below. And if you'd like to not follow us on YouTube, there's lots of ways that you can follow along with our content by going to PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows and all of the ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along.